It started like any regular Thursday evening. I had just left work and stopped by the upscale boutique inside Westgate Plaza. The kind of place where the sales associates greet you by eyeing your purse before your smile. Still, I walked in with my head high, like I always do. I wasn't there to impress anyone, just to grab a blazer I'd seen online. The store was quiet. A pop playlist echoed softly off the polished marble floors. I tried on a navy jacket, checked the fit in the mirror, then headed toward the checkout. That's when I felt it, the shift. The kind of silence that slinks into a room before something tense unfolds. I turned slightly and noticed two uniformed security guards speaking into their radios near the glass doors. One of them pointed in my direction. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe they were watching someone else. But when I stepped up to the register, the cashier suddenly looked uneasy. She hesitated, asked if I needed help finding anything, even though I clearly had what I came for. Her eyes darted toward the guards, now slowly approaching. "Ma'am," one of them said firmly. "We need to speak with you for a moment." I blinked, caught off guard. "What for?" "There's been a report," he continued. "Something may have been taken. We'd like to check your bag before you leave." I let out a slow breath, trying to stay composed. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" I asked. The second guard shifted. "It's just procedure. We ask that you cooperate." I looked past them, two customers were already watching. One even pulled out her phone. "Fine," I said, setting my handbag down calmly. "But you're going to regret this." Because I knew what was sitting in my inner pocket. And they clearly had no idea who they were talking to. The taller of the two guards reached for my bag with a practiced motion, like he'd done this 100 times. I didn't flinch. I kept my expression neutral, though my pulse had started to tick faster. He opened it slowly, as if expecting something dramatic, maybe a hidden necklace or a security tag shoved between receipts. Instead, he found a pair of sunglasses, my wallet, a few pens, and a neatly folded envelope with a gold seal. He picked it up cautiously. "What's this?" I didn't answer. I wanted to watch it unfold. He flipped open the envelope. First, his brow furrowed. Then his lips parted just slightly. His partner leaned in to get a look too. The cashier, pretending not to stare, was now frozen in place, receipt still half-printed behind her. Inside the envelope was my federal ID. My real one, the kind you don't get unless you're deep in. The kind that doesn't just say, "government employee," but says which branch, in bold lettering, with clearance stamps that don't come off with age or pressure. The silence was loud. The same kind of loud I'd felt when they first approached me. The taller guard cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I think," he started. "You think wrong," I said, my voice sharp now. "And you just made a very serious mistake." I picked up my ID and held it out clearly so both of them, and anyone watching, could see the seal and signature. "You want to detain someone, you better be damn sure who they are first." Both men looked like they'd swallowed a mouthful of sand. But it wasn't over yet. I watched their expressions shift from authority to panic. Their shoulders slumped. Their hands, once hovering confidently near their belts, now dangled awkwardly at their sides. The shorter guard tried to recover. "We were just following standard procedures, ma'am. It's nothing personal." I stepped forward slowly, just enough to make them step back. "That's where you're wrong. It becomes personal when you target someone without cause. When you humiliate them in front of strangers. When you assume." The taller one opened his mouth like he wanted to speak, then thought better of it. A store manager appeared suddenly, probably summoned by the silent cashier. He was a wiry man in his 50s with too much cologne and not enough awareness. "Is there a problem here?" Before the guards could answer, I turned to face him directly and held up my ID again. Your team just falsely accused a federal officer of theft. They searched my belongings without probable cause. And they did it in front of witnesses. The manager's face went pale. I wasn't informed, he stammered, eyes darting from the badge to the guards, to the growing crowd just outside the store entrance. Trust me, you're informed now, I said. So here's what's going to happen. I paused. Everyone, the cashier, the guards, even a woman pretending to look at handbags, leaned in, waiting. You're going to file a written report. You're going to document everything that happened, and I'll be leaving with a copy. Then, you're going to make a phone call, not to mall security, but to your corporate legal office. Because if I don't get a formal apology in writing by tomorrow afternoon, this becomes a federal complaint. The room was so quiet, I could hear someone's ringtone buzzing in their purse. And that's when the taller guard, the same one who'd rifled through my bag moments earlier, said quietly, "We didn't know who you were." I looked him dead in the eye. That's exactly the problem. The manager was sweating now, his hand nervously tugging at the collar of his striped shirt. Of course, ma'am. Yes. Absolutely. We'll handle this properly. He turned to the guards with forced authority. You two, go to the office. Now. I'll deal with you later. They hesitated, still stunned, but eventually walked off without a word. Heads down. No swagger this time. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the store, some pretending to browse, others openly watching. A woman near the fitting rooms gave me a subtle nod. A silent kind of respect. The manager started sputtering again, trying to salvage whatever was left of the store's dignity. Please, if there's anything else we can do to make this right, you can start by not letting your staff profile people based on assumptions, I snapped. You can train them to ask questions before they act like heroes. He nodded rapidly. Of course. Of course. I'll make sure this never happens again. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket. What's the name of your district manager? And give me your internal complaint form, the real one, not the customer suggestion slip. He disappeared to the back without another word. I looked around one last time. The crowd had thinned, but a few people were still watching. Not with pity, but like they had just seen a lion roar in the middle of a mall. I didn't want pity. I wanted change. And as I slid my federal ID back into its sleeve and walked out of the store, I made one thing clear, with every step I took, you never know who someone is. Until they show you. I left the store without looking back. The marble floors of the mall reflected my silhouette, steady and sharp. My heels echoed with purpose. No alarm buzzed behind me. No one tried to stop me. The same people who once eyed me with suspicion now parted like water as I walked. Outside, the sun was dipping low behind the plaza, casting long shadows over the parking lot. I paused near a bench and let myself breathe. Not because I was shaken, but because I was angry. Angry that it still happened. That assumptions could override facts. That confidence could be mistaken for guilt. But that anger? I'd learned to use it. By the time I got home, I had already submitted an internal incident report through federal channels. I attached witness statements from 2 bystanders who had followed me out, offering support. I added a copy of the store's footage, which the manager had nervously emailed me to try and smooth things over. The next morning, I received 2 phone calls. One was from the boutique's regional director. Full of apologies, promises, and reassurances that the guards were being reassigned, and that company-wide training was underway. The second call came from the mall's legal office. They had reviewed my credentials and expressed their deep regret. I stopped them halfway through their statement. I'm not looking for sympathy, I said flatly. I'm looking for accountability. And I meant every word. Because I wasn't just a shopper. I wasn't just a name on an ID badge. I was a reminder. A reminder that the people you doubt the fastest May be the ones who outrank you the most. A week later, I returned to Westgate Plaza, not to shop, but for a meeting. The mall's corporate office had invited me to speak at a training session for their security team and senior staff. I almost declined. Almost. But then I remembered the look on those guards' faces. The way a simple assumption turned into public humiliation. I knew my voice could do more than just report. It could educate. The conference room was full, suits, uniforms, name tags. Some looked uncomfortable. Some curious. A few, genuinely open. I stood at the front with nothing in my hands but my ID. This, I said, holding it up, shouldn't have to hit the floor for someone to be treated with respect. They were quiet. Listening. I told them about that night. About dignity. About professionalism. About how perception without context is dangerous. I didn't yell. I didn't shame. I gave them the truth, raw and steady. By the time I finished, even the ones who had crossed their arms at the start had unfolded them. Afterward, a young female guard approached me, eyes wide. "I want to thank you," she said. "You didn't have to come here, but you did. You changed how I see my job." I gave her a nod. That's the point. As I walked out of the building, the same doors where it had all started, I felt something I hadn't that night, not just justice, but progress. Because sometimes, power isn't in flashing a badge. It's in choosing to stay and speak, even when walking away would be easier. True authority isn't just recognized. It's earned. 2 months later, something unexpected happened. An envelope arrived at my office, no return address, just a clean, matte black seal. Inside was a formal letter from the boutique's parent corporation. But it wasn't another apology. It was an offer. They were launching a national initiative on anti-bias training across all their retail locations. And they wanted me, not just as a consultant, but as a lead advisor on the program's development. Paid. With full creative control. I stared at the letter for a long time. Not because I needed the money. I had a career. A respected one. But this was different. This wasn't just about correcting one night's mistake. It was about using it to shift how people in uniform, behind counters, and holding clipboards saw the world around them. I accepted. The first training launched in Atlanta. Then Chicago. Then Denver. I didn't attend them all, but I reviewed the material, rewrote sections, inserted real-life case studies, including mine, anonymously labeled as Incident 47B. Change takes time. But it starts with one moment. One confrontation. One ID hitting the floor. That night at Westgate wasn't just a spark of tension. It was the start of something bigger. And every time a guard hesitates, remembers the training, and decides to ask instead of assume, that moment echoes. Because now, the lesson isn't just written in a manual. It's written in memory. A year later, I stood on a stage in Washington, D.C. It wasn't something I had planned. I never sought attention. But the department had nominated me for a public service award, one given quietly, behind closed doors, to people who turned personal moments into national impact. The audience was a mix of federal officials, civic leaders, and a few press members in the back. When they called my name, I walked to the podium calmly, dressed not in a uniform, but in the same navy blazer I had been accused of stealing that night. Poetic, really. I took a breath and looked out over the crowd. I was profiled inside a boutique, not on a battlefield. But the damage felt the same, I said. They didn't see a threat. They didn't see a person. They saw a problem that needed removing. A few heads bowed. But instead of getting angry, I got organized. Instead of filing a complaint and walking away, I stayed. I spoke. I returned. And now? Over 1,000 employees across 6 states are trained differently because of that moment. There was silence. Then applause. Not explosive. But real. Afterward, as I stepped off stage, a young intern approached me. She looked barely out of college, anxious, starstruck. "I just want you to know," she said quietly, "I was thinking of leaving this job. Didn't think people like us made change here. But after tonight, I'm staying." That meant more than any award. Because when you stand your ground with dignity, when you turn pain into purpose, you don't just rewrite your story. You give someone else permission to write theirs. 3 years had passed. The incident at Westgate Plaza had become a case study. Not just in retail security trainings, but in law schools, HR departments, and leadership seminars. It was no longer about a blazer or a bag, it was about the moment when a single decision revealed everything broken underneath. I had moved on professionally, promoted twice, now serving on an interagency board focused on civil accountability and internal conduct. But one evening, on my way home from a policy summit in New York, I made an unplanned stop. Westgate Plaza. Same mall. Same parking lot. Same glass doors. But everything was different. Inside the boutique, there was a new manager. A more diverse team. A wall-mounted plaque near the entrance caught my eye. It read, "This location proudly participates in the National Equity Accountability Program, established in partnership with federal advisors and former customers." I smiled. Then I noticed her, the young female security guard who had thanked me years earlier during that first training. She recognized me instantly, stood up straight, and gave a small nod. "No incident since that day," she said quietly, stepping beside me. "That's the goal," I replied. "Prevention, not reaction." Before I left, I turned to look around one last time. No tension. No hushed radios. Just people, shopping, chatting, living. It had taken one dropped ID to change a room. But it took persistence, truth, and accountability to change a system. And standing there in the place where it all began, I realized something else. The moment they doubted who I was the moment I found exactly who I had to become. It was a Monday morning when I received the invitation. A new federal training center was opening in Maryland, one dedicated to ethics, civilian interaction, and bias prevention for public-facing personnel, airport staff, law enforcement, border patrol, private security. The works. And they wanted to name one of the flagship modules after me. I didn't expect it. I didn't ask for it. But I knew what it meant. The official title, The Langston Protocol, Situational Judgment Silent Bias in Authority Response. I stared at the email for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I thought about that moment in the store. The shift in the air. The weight of the eyes. The silence after my ID hit the floor. And I typed back one word, accepted. That spring, I walked through the new training facility, clean walls, glass doors, everything state-of-the-art. In one simulation room, they played out a reenactment of the original incident. Same setup. Same details. Except this time, halfway through the scenario, the trainee stopped. Looked. Thought. Then asked, "Excuse me, ma'am. May I assist you with something?" That one choice changed the entire outcome of the drill. A ripple. A shift. Proof that growth had taken root. As I stepped outside into the afternoon sun, badge clipped to my side, blazer over my shoulder, I realized something important. They didn't just remember the mistake. They remembered the response. And that, not the confrontation, not the fear, would be my legacy. Because power isn't in the badge. It's in how you use it.